What makes a femme fatale? The femme fatale derives from the French word for fatal woman. This character traditionally is a seductress, temptress that lures men, at least most commonly, into compromising scenarios. This is typically for their own benefit, whether to heal a wound of loneliness or something more nefarious. Their goal is to trick the protagonist into jeopardy. Hey there, my name's Porsha Lauri. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. In this video, we are finally doing our deep dive into the trope of femme fatales. I don't have a lot of familiarity, honestly, with this kind of character type, which I think is why I find it so fascinating to learn about. So if this is something that interests you, if you like deep diving into subgenres of film and character types, then do me a solid and drop a like on this video, then run over to that subscribe button, hit the bell next to it, so you don't miss any more installments on this series. And of course, if you enjoy my opinion on all things pop culture-y, movies, all that good stuff, be sure to check out my podcast. I co-host a podcast with my boyfriend and his best friend, and we just sit around, we talk about movies, and it's a whole lot of fun. So I hope you'll join us over there. You can find us on iTunes, Spotify, and anywhere you get your podcasts. Before I get into the nitty-gritty of the movies we're going to be discussing today, in the past when I've done these what did we learn entries, they've almost always been about childhood situations, how we learn from those situations from these movies so that we could take into our real lives. And I am trying to transition this series into being a little bit more introspective, but with this version of the series, I'd really like to delve into different types of topics per season and see how they're represented on camera and kind of just dive into them and discuss what we think. I think it's first important to look at the historical background of the femme fatale character. In the 1950s to 60s, film noir coined the infamous femme fatale archetype with movies like Double Indemnity and Gilda. These movies were still required to follow the Hays Code at this time, and so this character could exist but must be destroyed or justice must be served by the end of the film, limiting the character dynamics. The 80s and 90s saw another rise in this character as it had evolved a bit with the times. Showcased in movies like Body Heat, which sets out to give an opposite ending from Double Indemnity to have the antagonist come out on top, and Basic Instinct hinting at the same. The 2000s brought on more psychological, layered, anti-hero perspectives to this character type, with angsty teen entries like Catherine in Cruel Intentions and the infamous Amazing Amy of Gone Girl fame. Now that we've done a little history of the femme fatale, let's talk more about the characteristics that are commonly used within this trope. So some common characteristics of femme fatale characters would be a strong sense of self and sort of a radiating confidence with an air of mystery and intrigue. I think the most common thing that we recognize when we see a femme fatale character on screen is that she moves as though she's the only person and the most important person in the room. She has like what seems to be an effortless flow, confidence, appearing to be unapologetic even if she's doing something that may or may not be perceived as rude or what have you. Because you don't really know why she's so confident in herself, it makes it more intriguing. It builds this mystery. And, just as quickly as she can enter a room, she can exit it. And, you're going to be like, where was that girl? Something else that tends to stick out about this character is that they might be fiercely independent or somewhat of an overachiever. And I think this has a lot to do with the roots of where femme fatales come from, especially in the era that they came out in. So in the 50s to 60s, the common goal for most women, culturally speaking, was to be a housewife and to be a mother. To have a character who is female and maybe strive for something bigger than that was pretty controversial at the time, and so that is another trait that they would tack onto this femme fatale character as sort of someone like not to be trusted because they're going against the norm. Now, of course, we can't talk about femme fatales without also talking about style. So much of the femme fatale character is rooted in the appearance of that character. So whether that be, I think most notably, most femme fatales, at least in the early days, are portrayed by like brunette or darker featured women, and this came with its own sense of kind of allure. I don't think the femme fatale style is quite as narrow as it used to be, but it definitely was, you know, dark colors, just like the sense of evil, if you will. Also, with the characteristics of a femme fatale, there's also a sense of seduction, correct? Like that's kind of how they manipulate their victims into getting what they want. So the clothing has to kind of be a silent piece of the dialogue that gives you that perception, so that upon first look you already have a perceived notion of what this character might be. So that's when we get into more like revealing outfits, shorter skirts, higher heels, bigger boots, you know, whatever is culturally considered to be sexy at the time. A few things that are going to be absolutely pivotal in having a femme fatale is that she needs to be extremely charming, conventionally beautiful, an expert liar, very forward with their sexuality, especially if the character is an adult. And this character is also usually the first to initiate intimacy of any kind, whether that be kissing or otherwise. I don't know why I said otherwise like that, like so suggestive. Like, what am I doing? Now, the pattern of abuse, I think, has not really changed that much over time when it comes to this character type. This is typically, you know, overtly charming and irresistible and enigmatic in the beginning until it devolves into somewhat of an obsession type situation. And during this time is when we'll see the character kind of flip a switch. And so from this point on, the character is no longer as approachable as they were prior, and now they've become just outwardly aggressive, violent, deceitful, whatever the case may be, because usually by this point in the movie, things are not going their way, and that is unacceptable in their world. So in this video, we're going to be talking about teen obsession. Something I remember to be a popular trope hidden in various teen movies of the late 90s and early 2000s was this teen fatale always aspired to have something that's possessed by the protagonist. While not always murderous, they will go to great lengths to achieve their goal and use their worldliness to get them there. Diving headfirst into this topic, let's compare two teens that find themselves obsessed with a member of the opposite sex. The first movie I'm going to get into is called SwimFan. And to say I've watched this movie a lot would be an understatement. I don't know why, but I was kind of obsessed with this movie as a kid. SwimFan tells the story of high school senior Ben Cronin, who is a championship swimmer, aspiring doctor, and in love with his high school sweetheart, Amy. Just as life is beginning to come together for Ben, newcomer Madison moves to town, and she seems to have only one goal in mind: to be with Ben. Madison slowly builds a damsel in distress type narrative for herself to lure Ben in. She agrees to keep it secret in the moment, but in the same instance starts to become delusional about the relationship between the two. Life steadily begins unraveling for Ben in the most earth-shattering of ways, and he will have to figure out the origins of Madison's story to stop her from destroying everything and everyone. So some of my initial thoughts when rewatching this movie for the first time in many, many years, this is so quintessentially a 2000s film, down to the blue ass lenses. What is it with early 2000s teen drama or thriller movies being all shot in this weird blue? Like we're all drowning in the ocean. I get that blue conveys sadness, but like this is so overt and over the top. I don't know that it's completely necessary. I personally found the big twist in the movie, or like when you find out more about Madison, I found that all to be really cheesy, really cliche, and it really didn't work for me as an adult. But as a kid, as a teen, I really enjoyed this movie, and I thought it was wild that like basically the same scenario kind of happens with someone else from Madison's past. Something else I was really surprised with, because I do remember watching this movie so much as a kid, is that I really didn't find much chemistry between really any of the characters or relationships. I think the relationship between Ben and Amy seemed relatively believable. However, I really didn't feel connections between like Ben and his friends, or like even his mom particularly. Even though I'm supposed to believe that Madison is super obsessed with Ben, I got the impression that she was frustrated and more angered by him than I bought like the obsession thing. So I kind of didn't really buy that she was really obsessed with this guy. I don't know, it wasn't totally selling me. I also found the bulk of characters to be kind of unlikable. Like, for example, Ben like willingly cheats on his longtime girlfriend for not much of a reason, like just because like she's a girl and she found him attractive. Like, the only time I really did feel bad was Amy. Like at the end in the pool, I was like, you know, Amy just out here trying to mind her own business, trying to like figure out where she's gonna go to college, what's gonna work for her, but also stay in her relationship. Like, the girl's got, you know, her own set of issues, and she did not need to be pulled into this mess. Also, I feel really bad for Madison's cousin that she comes to live with, because like this guy gets made fun of at school. He clearly, like, his demeanor tells me like something went down in his past, and so that's why nobody talks to him anymore. They call him a freak or whatever. And like, we don't get to dive into that at all. And that's really disappointing. Now let's talk about our other movie. The Crush tells the story of Nick Elliott, a journalist starting a job for a prominent magazine in a new city. He moves into a semi-secluded guest house owned by a rich family, the Forresters. The parents are seemingly never around except for their unsupervised 14-year-old teenage daughter, Adrian. Curious of the new arrival, she makes herself very comfortable with and around Nick, to the point of showing up on his doorstep anytime she pleases. At first, Nick finds the behavior childish but innocent, but after a not-so-innocent conversation and kiss, things become uncomfortable for Nick. Soon, Adrian inserts herself into situations compromising to him, altering and/or deleting his work when he doesn't reciprocate her feelings, and harming others that threaten to expose her true intentions. Nick must prove to everyone that precocious, smart, horse-riding piano prodigy Adrian is a dangerous temptress set out on having him to herself or else. This movie made me uncomfortable, proving that Alicia Silverstone acting was completely overshadowed by the greatness of Clueless. She is subtly diabolical and too smart for her age, character, and acting choices. While I think the overtly sexual nature of hormonal teenagers is just kind of gross, the scarily obsessed teen is nailed, and she made me scared of her. I think that this film really showcases how talented Alicia Silverstone is. She's not a one character wonder. Like, she is capable of doing different types of characters and acting with different layers. But I don't think that putting the seductress in an age where she cannot consent I think that's in poor taste. There is a scene where Elliot is in her bedroom for whatever reason, we'll just go with it, and he's hiding in her closet and not wanting to be seen by her, and she comes in. It's implied to the audience that she is aware that he is in the closet, and she disrobes because she is getting ready to take a bath. So there was small things like that where I was like, I mean, I guess if we want to try to play out this narrative, this story, then like, okay, but was this scene completely necessary? I also found The Crush to have a lot of unredeemable characters, but I guess that's kind of intentional. I usually love Cary Elwes, but man, I wanted to punch him in the nose for most of this movie, so I didn't love him. Thought the acting choices were, again, done well. I thought this was well acted. At times, there would be music spikes, or people would just like run away in a fit of like emotion, and it felt a little Lifetime-y, but I also think that mostly just has to do with how films were made at that time. I think it's more of a product of its time. I don't think that those things necessarily take away anything. It's just not how movies are done right now. Once again, I felt bad for the Amy character in this movie. I don't know why Amy's are getting the short stick, but she gets attacked by bees, which is my actual nightmare. It's a genuine fear of mine. So yeah, I felt bad for Amy. And also Amy told Elliot, she's like, this girl's no good. Like, she's a trouble. Like, don't keep involving yourself with her. And he's like, nah, everything's gonna be fine. Amy was right. So now that we've discussed a little bit about each of the movies and kind of talked about the femme fatale characters, now we can break down each characteristic, go through them, and see which character truly embodied the femme fatale archetype that we have kind of laid out for ourselves. So I have divided each characteristic into my unofficial comparison list. This might be something in the series that changes over time, but for now, this is what we're gonna be working with. For confidence and mystery, I decided to go with Adrian. I think Adrian really carries that confidence, the walking into the room, and just knowing that, you know, you're meant to be in that room, you're meant to talk to whoever you want to. She has that air of like, if I'm the smartest person in the room, then I'm in the wrong room type of energy. And I think that even though she's younger than our other character, she has kind of mastered this art. And that could also be from looking or watching her parents, because she does seem to be more involved with adults than kids of her own age. I do think Madison does have an air of confidence. I think that is a mask, and it kind of falls the moment that things are not going the way that she wants with Ben. I feel like the confidence that she had to lure him in dissipates rather quickly, whereas Adrian maintains that like what she's doing is right, so she moves with authority throughout the entirety of the film. Independent overachiever. Now, I definitely think that this one is sort of split. I did end up choosing Madison only because I think her manipulations are a little less on the surface, a little less obvious. They're a little bit more manipulative. Adrian is the obvious child prodigy, but it kind of goes without, like, she's not really trying to be an overachiever. She's just naturally good at a lot of things, which is what makes her so bored and have all this time to obsess over someone else. So I wouldn't say that like her character is necessarily trying to prove something to anyone. She's just naturally can do that. She is more interested in a challenge because that's something that she's lacking in her daily life. Who had the better style? So of course this one is extremely subjective, and so this is going to be fully based on just my opinion. But I personally decided to go with Madison because I thought Madison had more of a unique style. I'm going to try to do this moving forward with my videos, but I want to try to dress the part because I feel like it really, you know, like it sends the video message home better. Is kind of a classic vintage Southern Belle type of look, like the naturally wavy curly hair, and like every once in a while if she's doing something nice, it's kind of pulled back and away from her face. The classic silhouettes, a lot of skirts and dresses. There is a time where she's dressing like a little edgy because I know she's wearing like a leather skirt, but for the most part her looks seem to be very classic, reminiscent of like a 50s 60s type of energy. Whereas I would say Adrian is dressed like everyone else in the early 90s, so she's very trendy, very on point, which makes sense given that her parents are rich, so they always want her looking presentable and in like the latest fashion. Whereas Madison is definitely more of a classic. Who has better game? Who has better chemistry with their person of interest? Who's got the better riz? And unfortunately, I had to pick Adrian for this one because again, I thought the chemistry or connection, I don't like putting it that way, between Alicia Silverstone and Carrie Elwes was a lot better than in SwimFan. So I put that one up higher. I also think that Adrian is a little bit more clever. Like the things she says are more, I just think that she's a little bit more of a well-written character. I did have to give her the A on this one, but I felt weird about it, okay? Now, when it comes to the pattern of abuse, I would say that these movies are pretty much the same, so I put them on the same level. They have this idea of like a young person that gets obsessed with someone and doesn't kind of know how to stop, and you know, if I can't have you, no one kind of can, that type of thing. And both of them, even though they're really young, have a history of this already. So like, I believe they either mention that Adrian has done this before, or it's at the end because we see her doing it once again, like the cycle continues. And with Madison, we know that she has done this prior. That's something that we learned during Ben looking more into it and trying to figure out how to rescue his girlfriend. I don't really give either character a kudo on this. I thought it was really, really predictable, both movies, and neither of them gave me that sense of thrill or excitement about what might happen. It was a little bit too easy to spot. So yeah, pretty much I liked Adrian's reason behind it, because it was clear that even though she had everything she could ever want, all the opportunities, all the talent that she could want, it wasn't enough because she wasn't getting any attention at home. Ultimately, if her parents had paid more attention to her, then maybe she wouldn't be acting out in these ways or have this obsession issue going on. This is really showcased by the end of the movie when we see that, you know, her obsession has flipped from Elliot to now the doctor that is giving her all of his attention. So I think that that's a much more interesting and kind of like more high stakes ending. And so it was like way more interesting to me to like hypothesize, like, where does that character go from here? Like, what does her adulthood or even the rest of her teenhood look like? Whereas with Madison, I mean, we know what happens at the end, so like that was kind of like case closed, but also I don't feel like they delved into much with her. Like, I guess, yeah, she's just hyper controlling, and like I think it's understood that her ex wanted to break up with her, so she like caused a car accident, and now he's in a coma for the rest of his life. Like, it's something to that degree. I might be messing it up a little bit, but that wasn't enough for me. Like, that's not enough to get obsessed with a new guy and like use him as your like replacement ex, because like he's a fellow jock. And like, what's your obsession with jocks, or is it like swimmers specifically? Tell me in the comments with which character you would choose as the ultimate femme fatale. But that's gonna do it for me for this video. I hope you enjoyed this. Be sure to do me a solid and drop a like on it. If you did, go make sure that you hit that subscribe button and the bell next to it so that you know every time I upload and that you don't miss any installments of this series. You can check out the podcast. It's available anywhere you get your podcasts, and you can follow me on my various social medias. I will have them all linked in the description box below. If you've made it this far, I really appreciate you, but I really, really would love to further this conversation in the comments down below. So please let me know what you thought of the video. Let me know what you think of this archetype, and if you have any suggestions for other titles that we might check out before we start our next season. That's all I have for you guys for today. Our next video, we're gonna be taking a look into a movie that I've talked about a lot on my channel already, but I just couldn't help myself. I gotta do a whole dedicated video. But until then, I will catch you guys next time. Bye.